We tend to have the discussion about the wall with respect to illegal immigration problem, but you can't forget it's criminals, it's traffickers, it's smugglers, it's special interest aliens, potentially terrorists. It's all the same pathways. The transnational criminal organizations are happy to sell their services to anyone. Right? So we really need to stop their ability to cross.
That was me. I had the privilege of going to the border 2 weeks ago to the Rio Grande sector with Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. Immigration, legal and illegal, huge issue in this country and the United States in 2017 and 18. Even 1 year into the Trump administration, it's still a big deal. How big? Well, according to a new research study by the Center for Immigration Studies, they're analyzing Census Bureau figures, a record 1.8 million people entered the U.S. legally or illegally in 2016. That's up 700,000 from 2011. Overall, since 2006, the U.S. has absorbed 14 million immigrants, because a lot of it through chain migration. Steve Camarata is director of the research for Center of Immigration Studies. Raul Reyes is an attorney and columnist. And Steve, let's start with you. Do those numbers bother you?
Well, I think the big question is this whole system essentially runs on autopilot. That is, we just keep taking folks. People sponsor, we hand out visas through the lottery, employers want someone, they bring them in, but nobody steps back and says, look, does this 1.8 million make sense? What is the absorption capacity for our schools or for our hospitals, our roads, our physical infrastructure? How many people can we assimilate? These are all really important questions, and in general, no one's asking them.
Right, and I'll tell you, Raul, you have Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, all with one thing in common. They have a merit-based immigration, merit-based immigration system. In 1965, we changed ours. Don't you think we should reevaluate what we're doing?
Well, in 1965, one of the reasons that we changed ours under the Immigration and Nationality Act was because the old system tended to give preference to people from Western Europe and Northern Europe. So the Congress back then decided they wanted a more egalitarian approach. They changed the system to what we have now, and what some people refer to as chain migration, which actually the American Immigration Lawyers Association considers a pejorative term, is also known as the family unity principle. And the family unity principle really has been a bedrock of our immigration system since 1965. I know a lot of people, I don't dispute these numbers. I think maybe the difference I have with Mr. Camarati is our interpretation of them. I look at these numbers and I say, well, we are admitting large numbers of people through legal channels, and some people are coming obviously undocumented. But meanwhile, we have a 4.1 unemployment rate at 17-year low. This is a historic low under this administration. So that shows to me, in my view, that our economy does have the capacity to integrate these workers.
But we also have an American culture to perpetuate, I think, forward. We shouldn't be embarrassed by it. We should embrace it. We got a unique background in history, and we might be running from it. What I found stunning, Steve, is that in New York, 28%. In Los Angeles, in California, over 30%. Texas, same thing. Nevada, what am I saying? 30% and plus of these households speak Spanish, not English. The English is our national language. Is that something for America to worry about?
Look, we all recognize that English is
first language. Not only do they have the ability to speak Spanish, but they only speak Spanish in their households.
Right. We could talk about the economics, but maybe some of the more important questions are the ones you raised. How many people can we absorb? Once immigration gets so big, it tends to overwhelm the assimilation process, because one of the ways assimilation works is immigrants and their kids basically get submerged in a sea of natives and their kids. But in many school systems in the United States, the majority of the kids now come from a foreign language background, often Spanish, though other languages. And so what we have now is a situation of about 67 million people who speak a language other than English at home. This doesn't just create challenges for our schools, but it does in many parts of the country represent a real challenge to English as the dominant form of communication. And we know that English is one of the glues that holds the country together.
Right, Raul.
Of course.
English, of course. So we agree on that. So, Raul, in the big picture.
Absolutely. And you know who else agrees with that is when you talk to recent immigrants, people who have been here a long time, and this has been borne out by studies from the nonpartisan Pew Center. The #1 concern for undocumented and legal immigrants in this country is to learn English quickly, because they understand if you don't know English, you can't get a job, you cannot function, you cannot be part of society. And we see that, for example, in our Latino population. The first generation that gets here, you're right, they speak mostly Spanish. Second generation, maybe they're bilingual. By the third generation, the Spanish is gone. They are English dominant. That has happened among members of my own family. My family background is Mexican-American. There are people in my family who don't know any Spanish, and that's a pattern we've seen again and again. So it's not so much a threat to American values or assimilation. What it is, it's just a different way of contributing to the fabric of the nation.
Chain migration in particular is being visited in immigration reform over the next month. I understand a bipartisan Senate committee already meeting, and they're going to do something bipartisan. Keep your fingers crossed, because we've got to do something together at some point, Steve, that they're going to go ahead. And I think chain migration is being looked at, because it's not just the nuclear family that's coming here, it is the extended family. And after a while, most of the immigrants coming here are off chain migration. Or now this lottery system is under scrutiny, especially because a couple of these guys come over, they turn out to be terrorists. So do you believe that we're doing the right thing in re-examining both those elements of immigration?
Absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. Remind your listeners, the way it works is if someone is here and becomes a citizen, an immigrant, he can then sponsor, say, a brother or sister and parents or any adult children they have. And after a few years, those people can then sponsor. So if you brought in your brother and his wife and children, then your brother's sister can then sponsor her siblings. And it kind of goes on. And that's why most people use the term chain migration. But none of that, it's clear, doesn't necessarily make sense for the United States, because those people are not entering based on their skills or the needs of the U.S. economy or anything like that. They're entering simply because they have a relative here who sponsors them. And that's really the big question. Does that make sense for our country? And
now let me just take this moment to say have a great new year. Thanks so much for the debate. This will be the =1 debate in January.
Thank you, too.
And we'll have you both back.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Happy New Year.
Or I'll put in a good word with Tucker. I don't have that type of power to bring you back. Vanity Fair lashed out at Hillary Clinton. Now they're backpedaling while President Trump watches, laughs, and tweets. That story next.